What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to episode 7 of the Transition Game Podcast. I'm your host, Rodney Williams. This podcast is brought to you by Athlete to Boardroom. Athlete to Boardroom is an athletic consulting company that helps athletes transition after sport and find their next plan A. Today, we have a special episode and a friend who's joining, and I'm going to read his bit of his bio from my phone because I don't want to mess it up. But today we're joined by Adam Smith, and Adam is an investor at Zeal Capital Partners, where he focuses on early stage investments in fintech, future of work, and healthcare. His perspective is shaped by his background in engineering and commercial real estate. And prior to venture, he helped oversee a $460 million multifamily and mixed use developments. Adam joined Zeal as an MBA fellow with the pre-seed mandate supporting sourcing diligence across the emerging tech companies, and he also is an active ecosystem builder, holding different coffee and conversations, founder dinner, funder dinners, things of that nature to bring folks together who are creating interesting things. And then he also earned his bachelor's degree in engineering from James Madison University, where he also played Division One football. He was a part of that 2016 national championship team. We love, can't wait to talk about that. And then he also later earned his MBA from UNC. Adam, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it. It's definitely an honor.
The bio is already long, and it's already doing some great things out there, and you're just getting started. So I would love to have this opportunity to kind of walk down the whole journey for you. But before we move to like way back when, let's talk about like present day. And I want to start off with a few questions just to hear about what it is you're doing now. What's your day to day look like? So for the people who don't know you, can you share more about what you do at Zeal Capital Partners?
So I'm an investor at Zeal Capital Partners. We're an early stage venture firm based in Washington, D.C., investing primarily in fintech, future of work, and healthcare. I often get the question of like, what does a typical day look like? And this is truly, truly one of the industries where you can say that no day looks the same.
Yeah.
From a portfolio standpoint to an investment standpoint to a due diligence standpoint, really it can vary within a day, within a week, within a month, and so a lot of different things going on there. But I've been enjoying it. Been in the role for I've been with Zeal for a little over 2 years now. Was an MBA fellow previous to that, as you mentioned, and joined on full time in November. So I'm uh, I'm looking forward to hitting the ground running in 2026. So I'm excited.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. It's really good to hear about the things you're doing. And for the viewers, Adam and I actually crossed paths because I used to work at Zales as a portfolio manager. And so seeing just all the things that are moving so fast in the tech space right now and the demand for capital, is there any interesting things that you've seen as of late when it comes to maybe AI or some of the companies that you're seeing that has you excited, or maybe some trends that we should all be looking for just as common consumers?
Yeah, it's tough to pinpoint one. I think there's a lot of things happening in the space right now. I think from a DevOps standpoint, it's something that we're trying to take a hard look at, just in the sense that, with all these different AI applications going on and happening and being built, what
Yeah.
is truly the infrastructure behind it that allows these agents and allows this stuff to really run. So taking a hard look at that. I think physical AI as well is something that we're taking a look at. And then with with my commercial real estate background, prop tech is something that I'm just very bullish on, and I think that it's one of those industries that it's been behind in terms of technology over the past 10, 15,
Mhm.
20 years, and so those I feel like are opportunities to really make a large impact with tech, and so looking forward to continue to see what people are building.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting, and things are fast moving. You're in an interesting space, but you didn't just get there, right? The love of just competing and advancing started from football. And we mentioned that you played at JMU. JMU is probably one of the best campuses I've ever been to, and I say that like when I was visiting. And obviously for basketball instead of football, one of the things that stood out was that the campus was just like clean. Like the campus was clean, and then the dining hall at that time, this is back, man, this is like 2012 when I visited, 2011. The
Mm,
dining hall was great. I was like, I think I would love to go to school here, but it was kind of in the middle of nowhere.
yeah, no joke, no joke.
Yeah,
So
how did you
one of the
decide
things.
on JMU?
So interestingly enough, I was a late bloomer in high school. Really, I was playing on a team that at that time had five different starters from my base of my freshman year to my junior year that went to Clemson, UNC, Georgia Tech, Tennessee. Like this roster was honestly unbelievable, and those guys went off to do phenomenal things in their careers. And so I really didn't even see a lot of playtime until really junior year, and then obviously got an opportunity senior year. And it was interesting to start that recruiting journey. I felt like late. I went to the camps. I ran the 40-yard dashes. I did everything that I felt like I needed to do, and sometimes things just didn't fall my way, and so ended up getting really my top four at the time of this is December and January going into of my senior year. So getting ready for signing day, which is like maybe first week of February at the time. And I was visiting the Citadel. I was visiting Western Carolina. I was visiting um, West Point. And
Hmm.
actually, on the way up to West Point, this is a crazy story. On the way up to West Point, um, I didn't come from a military background, and so that the thought of being in the military, the thought of not having a normal, what I thought was a normal college experience, really pushed me away from that kind of opportunity. And it was interesting because my dad at the time was like, "No, you're going. Like, you need to take this opportunity." And it was tough to like, you know, understand that from a standpoint of just like really a 40-year decision, because I had friends going to and teammates going to these major ACC, SEC schools.
Hmm.
And so it really messed with my head a little bit, to be honest. And so I was on the way up to West Point. I'd already taken my Citadel and Western Carolina official visit. I was on the way up to West Point, and on the way up from Charlotte to New York, you ride on 81. And so I was passing through the campus, and truly this was God. On that car ride, I got a phone call from he was the former Citadel head coach. He had just gotten hired to James Madison, and he was like, "Hey, I wanted to tell you, I just got this job at James Madison. I still want you to come play for me. Would love for you to come up and come to an official visit the next weekend." So I'm like, cool. From North Carolina at the time, JMU just did not have that kind of brand recognition. Didn't have a huge name, um, and so I'm driving up 81, and I see this beautiful campus. One, I see this beautiful purple stadium on the left side,
Hmm.
and then I'm driving, and I on the right side I see it was UREC East Campus, and that was the first time I was like, oh, hold on, this is cool. Like, this is a different opportunity that maybe I hadn't really been paying attention to. And so went up to my West Point visit. It was obviously a lot different than the other official visits that I took. One, the weather, we were getting hammered with snow at the time in New York. I'm from North Carolina. I just wasn't used to that. And then at the same time, when you go on your other official visits at, some of these other universities, they want you to have they want you to experience the culture. They want you to experience maybe even a little bit of the nightlife. They want you to see what it would really be like to go to school there. And when I went to my West Point official visit, we went to the shooting range. And so that was really one of the first times where I was like, whoa, this is different. So
Yeah.
picked up that visit, and then the next week went up to James Madison for an official visit, and just fell in love. I mean, it was beautiful. The experience was awesome. At the time, the gear, like all of the things that like I felt like I wanted out of a school, JMU had to offer, and so ended up committing at that official visit. Signed probably a week and a half, 2 weeks later, whenever signing day was, and that was uh that was all she wrote.
I feel that because I feel like people don't understand how much the visit goes into things because it's kind of a picture of what this 4 years could be like.
For
Like the
sure.
visit, you can't get the feel for, all the teammates or all those things, but the experience that you get is crazy. And I remember when I was visiting St. Bonaventures, they were in my final four. And if you know St. Bonnie's, it's like past Buffalo, like in the middle of like it was crazy. And so for my visit, they took me to like a casino
Mm,
to like have a steak dinner, which was just fine. But
yeah.
then I went to Philly and like they took me to like all these nice places and I was like, yeah, yeah,
Oh, it's
like
different over here.
it was a little different, man. So I can see how from West Point, which is like the total like opposite of what um JMU can offer, how there can be a difference there. And while you were there, you talked about just the different struggles in transition in terms of finding your way on that team, and then maybe junior and senior year things started to open up for you. So talk about like that initial transition from high school sports to college and what was required to be successful.
So the good thing was I was on a 7-on-7 team at that time, and well, prior to that, and so I had kind of been with a lot of older guys, and so they really shared a lot about their experience of going into college and how different it is, and the weightlifting and the structure and the discipline. And I think you build this picture in your head of what that experience is going to look like, and then you get there and you're still surprised no matter how well you prepare, no matter how strong you are, how fast you are, how athletically gifted you are, how fast you think you can pick up a playbook. There just becomes a time where you realize that this is different and the demands are different. And so I had my I moved in June. Interestingly enough, I moved in June. I hadn't graduated high school yet, so I moved all my stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
3 days later, had to drive, like, started class. 3 days later, had to drive back to Charlotte to walk at my graduation, only to have to come right back to go into, your summer workouts, your, study hall, you're taking classes. And so that was a shock to me, to be honest. And I think I was in two classes at the time. And you senior year of high school, typically you may have a lighter class schedule. And so you're really focused on this transition and working out and making sure that you're going to be ready to play at the next level. And you have this thought in your head that you're going to go in and you were the guy, and
Hmm.
you're going to go in and you're going to still be the guy, like, hey, they recruited me here, because they wanted me here. They wanted me at the Citadel. And so now that he changed schools and he still went on to recruit me, like, they must really want me to come in here and play. And so, summer workouts were crazy. Like, it was unbelievable. Seriously, unbelievable. And they, played with some guys that are still bouncing around the league right now. And, I remember a couple different instances, but one specifically, um, we all the freshmen worked out together, and the upperclassmen, they worked out with whatever time group they had. We worked out during the hottest time of the day. We worked out at 1 p.m. every day. So the sun is blasting. They're trying to really weed out who's going to stay and who isn't. And so, we had these sprints and these workouts and these conditioning tests, and it was unbelievable. And I remember one of the summer workouts. Um, I had I was doing the drill. I had an upperclassman like, hey, what's your name? Hey, you, what's your name? And I was like, talk with a little bit of bass in your voice. I'm Adam. Yeah, he's like, all right, Adam. Hey, Adam, pick your damn feet up. And I was like, oh, so I was like, all right, this is real. And then, we would do workouts separately with freshmen and the upperclassmen, but then in the evenings on certain days you would have like your player led, practices. And so I remember going out there. I went in to play corner. I went out there and a guy hit me with, a little 1-2, hit me with a route, and it was a corner post. So one of those opportunities where you're running one way, he's running the other, and by the time you're trying to, turn around and catch the guy, like, he's in the end
Yeah,
zone. And that was another opportunity where I was like, this is different. Like,
yeah.
this is different. So it was all a shock to me, but it took some time to get through and figured it out. But that transition from high school to college is
It's
unbelievable.
like it's the speed. For me, it was like the speed, man. It's just like I thought that I was like you said, fast, strong, whatever. I jump really high. But like the speed and intensity that you have to keep like up like
Yep.
consistently was crazy. In like high school, you can kind of cruise because you may be better than the next guy, but then you get to this situation where it's like you're either gonna play or you're not. Like
Oh, no joke.
you're gonna separate yourself or you're not. And I think those summer workouts when you're a freshman going in are just so critical. And you really have to like go somewhere mentally to be able to lock in because it will fly by and people will just pass you by. Oh, he's not ready. Okay,
Oh, no
move
joke.
on. And I can only imagine that. Plus, I've heard stories about these football playbooks, right? Like when we're hooping, we call a play, okay, we're gonna run three, three, just one word,
Right,
three.
right.
And everybody knows, okay, I set the pick, you screen, you roll all the other things. But then I think I heard CJ Stroud say like a play. And I was like, are football plays really like that? Where it's like XYZ flat, da 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 da. Like, how long did it take you to like get into your playbook and be able to understand like how to transition mentally? Because I feel like maybe high school plays are different than college plays, and there may be some more complexities. What is that like? Because I don't know if I could run sprints, come back to the huddle, hear all those words, and then go back out and do it again. It's crazy.
So the interesting thing is like I played defense, so we didn't have as crazy of
Okay.
calls. But on defense, the way that the defense was set up was like as a safety, you made the strength call. Basically, you told the linebackers and the defensive line which way to line and the DBs which way to line up, like which way was the strength of the call, where the biggest threat was going to be for them to actually either run or pass the ball to. So that is like day one, like hey, you set the strength call. And so, that's a responsibility of a safety. And you feel like as a safety, you're the last man standing. Hey, I'm just back here having fun. I'm going to be, just cruising back here and maybe go pick off a couple of balls. And I think what I realized, early on was that you have fits on run plays. And these quarterbacks, once you get to a certain level, I think on the offensive side, if you were to run a wrong route, like sometimes that really just isn't as big of a deal. It's like, okay, hey, they may not even be looking at a side, like whatever. But on defense, if you play the wrong coverage on one side of the field or even on the same side of the field, you play the wrong coverage and someone on your side is playing a different coverage, well, now there's exposure. Now there's a gap. And these quarterbacks, when you get to a certain level and they're
Mm,
not just, hey, this is where I'm throwing the ball to, where they're actually reading the field, reading the coverage, reading the picture, they will expose you. And so that was one of the things that, going into, preseason camp, like I was trying to drill down the playbook. I was trying to understand, which checks to make, how to line people up, and then still
mm.
try to be athletic and physical enough to go in and make a play, even if it wasn't necessarily my play to make. And it was definitely incredibly difficult to understand the plays, but I had an incredible coach at the time that we had tests, like we had a playbook, and then we also had these tests that he would give us.
Okay.
And so you would have to write out, how you would line up on each play. You would line up how each of the safeties, each of the corners lined up, what coverage you would be calling in this position, or what, alignment you would think, or if you get this picture, what are the common routes that are typically run out of this formation. And so you start to learn some things about the game that you just didn't really have to worry about in high school, but
Yeah.
it takes a while to really grasp how complex, a defense is at the collegiate level.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man. So, the good thing part about JMU is you were part of some winning teams, obviously 2016 national championship team. Tell me a little bit about that and just in terms of, what that experience was like. What did it teach you being a part of those great teams like that?
I mean, crazy, crazy experience to get there. We, I think we ended up going 16, either 15 or I think 15-1 that year. And it was my freshman year. I was one of the five freshmen. My roommate and I were one of the two of the five freshmen that actually made the travel time, like the travel team. And so,
Nice.
we played on special teams. We would run down. We would try to knock somebody's head off, or you were on punt or whatever, kickoff return, whatever it was. And so we were just happy to be on the field. Like we weren't worried about defense, we weren't worried about offense. We were just like, all right, special teams, that's how we're gonna play. Let's go all out. And so, as a team, that was an incredible experience that year. We went on. So me being from North Carolina, we actually played UNC my third or fourth game of my freshman season. So that was another thing to me that I was like, okay, cool. I'm playing big time ball. Like, hey, I'm going into
Yeah.
I'm going into a stadium that realistically I wanted to play there. I wanted to go to North Carolina. And so I'm going in here, with at a smaller school and trying to find ways to get some playing time. But we that was the only game we lost that year. And so we went on and beat a bunch of really good teams, went on to beat North Dakota State, which they were like the mecca
Yeah.
of college football at that level at that time. And so we went up to Frisco, North Dakota, and beat those guys. Went to went to the national championship in Frisco, Texas, and ended up winning that. And so what's interesting is, I was a special teams guy, and so one of our playoff games, it was against Sam Houston State. This was like the peak of my freshman year season. So, I was playing on punt block, on the punt return team. We ended up trying to go for a block. I ended up diving out and I feel the ball basically bounce off of my face mask. So we block the punt. My roommate picks it up and scores a touchdown. Mind you, this is like
Tough.
this is after like all the Power Five schools seasons are done. Now they're getting ready to start transitioning into bowl games. So there wasn't that much football on at the time. So like people were watching these playoff games. So, make the block. My roommate picks it up. He scores. We go to like Chili's after the game. We're looking on the TV and we see the play. And I was like, okay, like this is once again, like this is big time ball. So now I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, I got to continue to just keep doing what I can do. So we, had the national championship game and crazy thing happened. So I ran down on kickoff, trying to make a tackle. I end up diving towards a kid trying to tackle his leg. Don't even make the tackle, but I land with my arm extended out and actually ended up tearing my labrum, tearing my bicep
Mm.
tendon, tearing my shoulder all the way up. And so I came to the sideline. I remember laying on the ground and I was like, that didn't feel right. I ran to the sideline and obviously you have the adrenaline pumping, but when something's not right. Ran to the sideline, they're doing all the tests. They're like, nope, you're good. And I'm like, I'm good. So I run down on a couple more kickoffs, and I'm like, if I have to tackle someone, it's going to be with one, the one shoulder that's good, and hopefully I don't land on the other shoulder. And
Mhm.
so end up tearing my shoulder that game. We didn't find out actually until like 2 years later. So I ended up playing through it for 2 years with a torn shoulder. But after the game, I remember, we're all hosting the trophy, we're all trying to find our families. And my shoulder was so numb and in so much pain that unfortunately, I didn't really get to experience, like the true celebratory fashion of like winning a national championship freshman year, traveling around the country. I took more flights as a freshman with James Madison football than I had taken, my entire life. And so traveling to these games and I just didn't get to experience that win as much as I would have liked to. And so, I felt like I was chasing that feeling the rest of my collegiate career because we ended up
Mhm.
going back my sophomore year, went to the national championship and lost to North Dakota State. And then, had a decent season junior year, actually played a lot, ended up working my way into a starting role. Senior year, we went back to the national championship and lost again to North Dakota State. And so they were our kryptonite. But
Yeah.
it was a great experience, especially that freshman year, just like finding a way to be on the field and experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think people don't realize how fast these moments go by. I still coach kids at the high school level to this day, and I'm trying to explain to them how you have to cherish every moment because you don't know like if you'll be able to make it back here or when you do if you'll be able to succeed or win or all of the other things, and so living in that moment is so important. And it's funny, like now you guys, I mean, now you're in national like football playoff like this year. Obviously the result wasn't what the result needed to be for you all, but the fact that you were able to kind of start and help grow the program, and then now you look back and you see where it is, it has to feel amazing. One of my young fellows is on that team, Trent Hendrick.
Mm,
He's a linebacker for you guys, and he
yep.
actually just declared. But he went to my high school, and I was always just kind of talking with him. So it was really cool to see him in that moment. And I'm sure as an alum, it had to be feel great to see all your guys out there competing, man.
Unbelievable to see the James Madison logo with the college football playoff logo, and to see them.
Crazy.
I actually went to the game, so I went out to Oregon for that game. Ended up leaving a family vacation early, went to
Mhm.
Oregon, and just to see like James Madison play on that kind of stage, I'm like, once again, this is big time ball, and the brand is obviously growing and will continue to grow. And so it's been just insane to see the kind of growth from when I went in 2016, starting in 2016 to 2020, like to see the growth over 10 years. It's insane to see.
For sure. So now you majored in engineering. Where did that come from? Was that always kind of a dream of yours to be an engineer? Or, where did that kind of motivation to choose that major come from?
So my dad's an engineer, and so
Mhm.
I was always good at math. In growing up, I was always good at problem solving, and that was one of my like non-negotiables when going to college to play football. It's like I want to go somewhere where I can study engineering and play football. Like that was just extremely important to me, and so that ruled out some of the schools because some schools either didn't have engineering or they knew, hey, this engineering program is not built out for a student athlete who's going to be missing classes to go to games and having
Mhm.
a really strict schedule. Like this is not that kind of program. And so it was one of those times where I ended up spending a lot of time with professors after hours, and having to have those conversations as an 18, 19, 20-year old. And even especially as a freshman, I'm like going up to these professors and I'm like, hey, this is my travel slip. I'm not going to be in class on Friday. And, I'm not even really playing. And so they're, as an engineering professor, they might look at you a little sideways, like, everyone else is here, why are you not able to be in class? And so I definitely had, some folk in that program that just they made sure that I was able to get all of the information, made sure that I was able to like create good relationships with professors, and ended up getting through the program, and it was an incredible experience. But it was tough, and that was the time like going through that for 4 years studying engineering because I was doing things. There was only one other engineer on the team. There was two at one time. There was two. One guy
Yeah.
ended up quitting, and the other guy, he was a walk on, and he was a long snapper. And so like a special teams player just doesn't have to spend as much time in the meeting room, with watching film and doing the things that you would have to do as a defensive player or specifically a safety. And so, I ended up getting through the program, and it it really taught me like time management and being able to juggle a bunch of different things at once. And that was truly like what allowed me to be able to transition even to, my first, gig out of undergrad, and then especially into venture where, I was just kind of saying earlier, no day is the same. It definitely is it can get hectic. Things move at a very fast pace. And so I think that studying engineering and playing football really taught me like, hey, you have to manage your time wisely, and at the same time, there really is there's neither of these have any give, right? You want to do well in the program, and you need to graduate, and you want to be able to leverage the things that you learned in class, but also you're starting, you are playing really good football. We as a coach, like coaches are depending on you to perform well to feed their family. And so that was that really taught me a whole lot about just time management and really like being an adult, like handling your business.
Yeah. I mean, it's really not common at all. Like, there's for the people who are listening, it's not common for an athlete to be able to complete an engineering program and also play Division I sports. It just doesn't happen a lot of times, especially in basketball and football. If you really kind of scroll through rosters and kind of look at majors, I guarantee you won't see it a lot. And so when I read that, I was really impressed, and not just impressed that you were able to do that, but to do that and also have success on the field, which is uncommon. And I think, in some of those things, like you said, you gained a lot of different skills that you're able to apply to your now life. And I want to kind of get into that transition a little bit now because we've had success in the field. We've been to the national championship like three times or whatever, three or four times, which is unheard of. You've been able to complete an engineering program. And then, at some point, take us into the mind of yourself, your senior year. You're thinking about, where does this game take me? What are my next steps? What did that transition conversation or thoughts, when did that occur? And then also, did you feel like as an athlete, I guess that was your identity, or did you already start to feel that you had an identity outside of athletics?
So I always made sure to have an identity outside of athletics. Like I always wanted to be extremely balanced. And so like there
Hmm.
were even a couple articles that came out about, studying engineering and playing football at a high level. And, I think a couple of games into my senior year, I went on a streak where I had like an interception every game for like 5 games in a row. And
Oh
so I was
wow.
to, I was a first team all conference, all CAA at the time, first team all conference my junior year. So I was coming off of that. I was leading the team with interceptions my senior year. I went on this crazy run of having 5 interceptions in a row, ended up with 6 interceptions. And so I was getting attention from agents, getting attention from scouts. And, we ended up finishing so we lost the national championship my senior year. And when I took those pads off, I truly, truly did not believe that that would be the last time I wore those pads. Like that just wasn't,
Mhm.
that never crossed my mind because I had already had all of these conversations with, agents and scouts and have had, good feedback. And I, started drinking the juice and I was reading the articles and I was looking at the ratings and like looking at what these writers felt should happen in the NFL draft or, as an undrafted free agent after. So I ended up signing with an agency right after, the national championship game. I was training for pro day. So pro day is like what you have at your school. If really every school has a pro day typically,
Mhm.
but that is like your NFL combine for, at your school. And so I was always extremely athletically gifted. Like I was going to test off the charts. And actually what ended up happening was, I trained from basically January to March. I was supposed to have pro day, like maybe it was like March 15th or something like that. We went home for spring break, March 6th. We went home, COVID hit, and never ended up going back. And so
Wow.
at that time, we were still trying to figure out like, hey, are we going to go back and have pro day? Like, what's happening? I have been training for months. Like, this is what I need in order to like really show scouts, like, hey, yes, I have the stats. I was first team all conference again. I was Associated Press All-American. I was starting to get the accolades. Now, all I need to do is pair that with some really good testing numbers, which I was already, I was training for,
Hmm.
and I should be in a really good spot. I was projected to be potentially seventh round, most likely like undrafted, high priority undrafted free agent. What ended up happening was when COVID hit, scouts were no longer able to travel to schools to see players or to see pro days. So pro day got nixed. Um, Typically, you would also have like, these other opportunities to go and showcase what you can do. So what we ended up doing, my agent was like, look, we're going to record a pro day. I'm going to have someone come out. They're going to, take all your measurements. They're going to, record all your times. You're going to do the bench press. You're going to do all these different things, and ended up having a great, pro day that was recorded, hit all the numbers that I wanted to hit. And then we started sending it out to all the scouts that, we had already previously had conversations with. And, I realistically, so I was a first team, all conference safety. And there was another guy who was a first team all conference safety the prior year, and ended up going to play for the Chargers. And so he also was, from a smaller school and had that kind of track record, was having some success. And so I was like, all right, I think they're showing me a lot of attention. Like, I think I'm gonna end up going to this team. What ended up happening was obviously pro day got canceled, but the roster limits, typically after the draft, you wind up getting a roster up to like 100 players. And then, as the preseason camp comes up and, all of that process, they'll trim the roster from 100 to 53 active players, and then you'll have like a practice squad. So this was the year that, because scouts couldn't go see players, I think they capped the roster at like 85 or 80. So,
Mm.
those 15 extra slots were positions where I felt like I was going to be in. They didn't have these like mini camps. It also typically gives, players an opportunity to come out and showcase, their skills and stuff like that after the draft. And, so I was playing this waiting game, and truly I got to a point where I would see like the waiver, like the transaction wire on Twitter. And so there would always be an update. And so I would literally type in UDFA, which is undrafted free agent, and I would see all all the signings. So it got to a point where I was, on Twitter, and I was refreshing like every 5 seconds, like seeing who all was getting signed, seeing who all was getting signed, seeing who all was getting signed. I'm communicating with my agent. My agent's like, don't worry, like we, should be
Yep.
fine.
And how that goes. Yep.
And then, you start getting those, time goes by and you're like, man, nothing's happened yet. I surely thought something would have happened. And, just didn't end up getting that opportunity. And so I ended up starting to transition to the workforce, moved up to DC to start a job. And crazy enough, another opportunity came. So this was before all like the XFL ended up being what it is today. But my agent was like, look, there's this showcase camp that you can, I got you an invite to, but it's in like 3 days. It's in California. Can you go? And this was after probably a couple of months of me living in DC, starting work. I had built this, like, honestly, like hatred for football and for training and for the game, that I was just like, I wasn't really working out at the time, so I wasn't ready. And so this is, I will never forget this. This opportunity came up, and I was like, hey, no, I'm not ready. Like, it's in 3 days. I would probably test okay, but I don't want to go out there and potentially embarrass myself. So give me, if they're gonna do it again, I will train for the next 2 months, and then I will come back. I will go to the camp, that showcase camp, whenever they have it next. What ended up happening was that showcase camp had so much success, and guys ended up getting signed like
Mhm.
crazy, that instead of it being like, hey, these undraft, these guys who maybe didn't get looks getting invites to this showcase camp, now it was guys who had already played in the NFL for maybe a year or two and were trying to get back on a team. They were getting the invites to the camp. So I trained, I went on this like 2 month like training period where I'm driving out an hour to go meet with this like footwork specialist. I'm doing footwork, after my 9 to 5 at night. I'm lifting, I'm doing all these things, I'm eating right. I cut out a bunch of different, things out of my life, didn't go out. And, I ended up like waiting for this opportunity to come again. And he was like, my agent basically said like, hey, look, the camp had a bunch of success the first time around. You applied, they didn't allow you into this one. And so like that. And that was one of the times where I realized like, man, you sometimes when an opportunity is in front of you, you really just have to take it, and take it full steam ahead, and not necessarily worry about what the outcome is going to be. Because I feel like if I would have gone, I still would have tested pretty well. I would have, you know, I would have had a decent showing. But I think waiting for the opportunity, like, hey, I'm not ready yet. Let me wait for, this
Yeah.
opportunity. Wait until I'm ready. Let me get ready for it. Ultimately ended up like
I guess they
biting me in the
say you
butt.
gotta stay ready so you don't have to get ready, all the things. But what they don't mention about that is all the things while you're waiting. And the mental toll of calls, and then I mean, having to see other people who didn't necessarily have what you had, like, get signed. I mean, the politics in it all. There's so much wrapped up in that transition from college sports to pro that is, I mean, there's so much to unpack in what you just said. For one, the pandemic, and the pandemic robbed a lot of athletes, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you think about you're kind of at the pinnacle now. Like you went through winning a championship to progressing to now being all conference, associate AP, like you said, like all these different things, and now the pandemic happens, which is something you can't control, which is the most
Yeah.
frustrating part. When I was playing overseas, it was my third year, and I was really starting to make the leap. Like I didn't really shoot threes in college. I didn't do all those things, and so once I got to Europe, my game started to develop. Year three in Sweden, I was like really playing well, and then the pandemic shut down the season, and I feel like, man, like I never got to show my stuff. And I think
Yeah.
there was kids in high school that like didn't get a chance to play. Like their season was canceled, so they didn't get a chance for colleges to see him. For you, being in that position, I can only imagine like the mental strain of being at the top of your prime essentially, and then
Yeah.
not to getting the right opportunity to show yourself. And even within that, you mentioned you had started working, and that's a whole nother thing in itself where the transition is already hard enough. If you happen to find yourself in an opportunity where you're making money and then the call comes, it's like, I mean, I want this, but do I uproot what I've already built? And
Right.
I mean, I can just imagine the confusion there. So when you talked about like you moved to DC and you started working, what was that like experience like? Was that, how did you feel in that experience? You talked about the hatred, which I love because I think we all go through a point where like the game pisses us off.
Yeah.
Um, but were you just like working and still kind of mad at the game, or were you, did you get this opportunity and you started focusing on that and kind of didn't worry about like football? Like, what was that whole um, thing like for you when you first started working in DC? Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, it was definitely tough. So I think, you know, part of the reason I ended up moving to DC was like, look, I had just been waiting on this opportunity. It wasn't, it didn't seem like it was coming. I was at home in Charlotte, living with my parents. And so I was there, I hadn't been with, in my parents' household for four
Right.
years, for that long. And so, I was living at home, you couldn't really do much. I was trying to train and do what I could, but there reached a certain point where I was like, I had already had an offer from a firm in DC, and so I was like, look, I'm just gonna go make money. Like, screw it. I'm gonna give this dream up. I'm gonna go make money. And so
Did
I
you
think
apply to that gig, or was there a connection that was made to like find that first opportunity? How did that come about?
so I applied. So actually, one of my classmates, I actually got the job back in like in January and didn't
Oh,
start until August, basically September. And so, I had secured this job because I was always like, I want to be balanced. Like, I want to make sure that I'm not the guy that, was, thinking he's going to go make it to the NFL and play for 15 years and do all these different things. Like, I was very realistic with, I felt like I was very realistic with the expectations. And so, I moved up to DC. I started this job and, realistically, like, I did not enjoy it. And part of that was just like, I had this spite for the game. I really didn't even watch football at the time. Granted, I'm not even like it. I was like, I'm not really watching football. I don't
okay.
really care about it. Like, whatever. If it's on, it's on. But I'm not going to go out of my way to go and be a fan of something that I felt like I I had the talent and the ability to go play in that league. And so it definitely aided me for a very long time. A very long time. And I moved up to DC, started this job, and that opportunity just never ended up coming, except for the camp. And at that time, I was trying to take like that athlete mindset, like I got to grind, I got to do, I'm going to put it all into this job, and so I didn't really have time to like train and still worry about like a dream of playing football and doing all these cool things. Once you start working, like you're saying, it's extremely tough to like give up your house, an apartment, a stable income, insurance, 401k. Like you're starting to build what you feel like is your life after football. And if the opportunity would have come, like I don't know how that would have all played out. So
Any regret like that still kind of lingers, or are you fully? kind of over it because I feel like there's for every athlete when you do stop, whether it's by injury, whether it's by opportunities not coming, it can be you know a kid, it can be a bunch of different
Yeah.
scenarios. But there's this period where some are able to just say it is what it is. Some like people like me will post clips of like when I used to play because I'm still trying to process like
It's
getting over
crazy.
it. But like, you know, where are you at now? I mean, any regret or any kind of feelings that are still kind of going towards the game, or are you fully
I,
transitioned and
I've fully transitioned. It definitely took a while. You know, it was tough to give up the game, and especially like I said, when I took off the pads for that last time, like I didn't really believe that that was going to be the last
didn't
time.
know?
So I
Yeah,
felt like I really, I really left a lot out there still on the table.
yeah,
So it was tough, but I think, God placed me where I was supposed to be. He allowed me to go through some situations to, build character, build some scar tissue. And, I
yeah.
actually, after, giving football up, just discovered golf. And so golf became that thing where I was like, all right, I can still be competitive. I'm not good at it, but it's something I can work at, something I can continue to try to, get better at. It's competitive. And so that became my thing. And I still golf. When it's sunny out, I probably golf once a week. And now more recently I've gotten into running. And so running is another one of those things that, I feel like has allowed me to still feel like I'm an athlete a little bit, because I went to support a cousin and a couple of old coworkers at a marathon in DC. And I remember like this moment changed my life forever. I remember we are not even at the first mile marker. So we're probably like 7/10 of a mile into the race where we're standing as, these runners are coming through. And I won't even say runners, I'll say racers. So, you know, you hear the cannon go off, whatever. People start flying up this hill, and the first people you see are first you see the police escort, you see the police cars come through, and then you see the paraplegics. So they're on bikes and they're biking up this massive hill. Like this is not even a full mile into the 26.2 mile race. So I'm like, man, they're getting after it. And then I see, right after that, there's like amputees, people, with prosthetics running this race. And then, I see, you have your runners, your, regular folk, and then you have, even like your senior folk who's starting to run. And I'm looking at these people and I'm like, I always viewed running as like a punishment. Like that was always something that I hated. And so
Facts.
see them, you know, as capable, you know, beings, and I'm just as capable. I was like, okay, I think this is something I need to put my mind to, commit to it, understand that like it sucks, and it's agreeing to like put your body through something that is uncomfortable. And so that has also helped me more recently with like really transitioning from being in that football mindset 24/7 to like, all right, now you have golf, which you can be competitive in, but it's not very physically taxing. You have
Yeah.
running that is extremely mentally and physically taxing, and if you don't do it right, you'll find yourself injured. So you really have to be strategic and smart with it. And then I think venture has allowed me to like really be competitive again, and like, all right, now I'm trying to go out there and win. Like I'm trying to go out there and find the best companies. I'm trying to go out there and you know help our portfolio in as many different ways as possible. I'm trying to go out there and like win deals. And so that is like the really the three things right now that are like allowing me to not really think about like, hey, football, I miss it. And of course you miss the game and you miss the memories. And I still am very much involved with the team and the alumni base. But I think finding different things to replace what you once had is extremely important.
Yeah, no, I agree. For me, it was coaching at the high school level. So do a part-time, and that's a way for me to really kind of dive in and just woosah because like you said, like I felt like I left a lot out there. And had I known like that last game and like whenever it was going to be my last, like I would have played so much harder.
Oh, I'm
Like
telling.
I
I'm
would
telling
have, man. I just didn't know. I just like, okay, well, they're canceling the season and like I'll be back next year. And I just
you. Yeah.
never was back. And I think that's for a lot of us who end up in this transition part, it's a kind of fool's gold for us 'cause we think we're owed another opportunity, but you just never know. It was even to the point, I remember I laugh at this. I didn't want to play in a men's league. Like all my friends, I was back here, I was working, so they were like, "Hey, like you can still have cardio. You're just a regular guy, whatever. Like just play in these men's league." And I was like, "Yeah, I just can't do it. My pride won't let me do it." And I
Yeah.
finally, like maybe last year, just said, "You know what? I'll play. Like I'll play in Arlington, in this men's league," and we won. And they gave me like a championship ring in the men's league, and I couldn't even put the ring on or hold it up in the picture because my pride was just like, okay, like
I'm
you're
telling you.
clearly not over it yet, Rodney. Like you need to work this out. I think I'm there now, and that I picked up the coaching and stuff like that helps, but it definitely like you just never know when your last moment is. And so for the athletes that are listening today that are actually still playing, yes, we're talking about transition, and we want you to prepare yourself but also give the game your all while you have the opportunity because teammates, everything you're going to remember. You just don't know when it's going to be your last time being in those locker rooms, being on that floor, on that field, and you want to make sure you get the most out of it for sure. So, man, we can talk all night, honestly. I
I know.
definitely want to dive into the venture piece because I think that that's huge. So you moved to DC, you started working, you went back to UNC, got your MBA, but you were also investment fellow at Zeal Capital Partners. So for the listeners who may not understand what VC is, many would like it to like Shark Tank or stuff like that. But just give a quick explanation of venture capital and then talk about your transition into that space and how that happened for you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would say the Shark Tank analogy is pretty accurate, but I think there's a larger relationship component that goes along with it. And so, you know, you're investing in early stage companies, and typically you have a stage focus, like how early are you willing to invest? You typically have a vertical focus, like what sectors am I most excited about? Like what sectors do I plan on investing in? And so, I'm at Zeal, and we invest in fintech, future of work, and healthcare. And at the pre-seed and seed stages, which is like the earliest stages of building and starting a company, a venture-backed company. And so it is, truly like hearing different founders pitch, their ideas, their company, what they're doing, their business, how they plan to monetize it. You're, underwriting it. You're doing all this due diligence to understand how it benchmarks against maybe what's currently out there, or, is there a white space? Is there an opportunity that, hasn't been captured yet? And so, you are really at the earliest stage of like the newest tech innovations that are being built and brought to the forefront. And so it
Yeah.
it is one of those things where like I think football once again just goes to help because it's one of the things that like you are never comfortable in this industry because there's someone out there who is building something that you have no idea about. There's some firm out there that is investing in something that maybe you haven't even heard about yet or don't have access to yet or don't have the relationship to hear and see and have visibility into what people believe is the next big thing or the thing that's going to solve some of the problems that we have in society and business and the world today and healthcare. And so you are truly at the forefront of like cutting edge technology.
Yeah. I mean, you keep mentioning how like your experience with football kind of helps fuel the way you attack deals, the way you approach your craft now, which is in venture. But wanted to even like kind of go deeper into that and just talk about like, do you believe that, being an athlete and maybe even for you to evaluate founders give you some sort of like advantage? Like, uh, I think sales is always a skill that athletes have. Different things around the tolerance to build things and the tolerance to kind of be uncomfortable with what you mentioned. Do you believe that, your athletic experience is giving you an advantage in your career now?
For sure. I think that, similar to what you were saying, the tolerance, but also when you play on a football team with 100 different people with 100 different backgrounds from a
Mm.
hundred different cities, maybe not 100, but 50 different cities in the U.S. or even in the world, because you have people coming from different countries. You start to learn how to communicate with folks differently, and you start to learn how to like hear people differently and listen to what people are saying, and then understand how like your mindset and what you see could be completely different than someone else's mindset and what they see. And neither of you may like you may neither be wrong, but I think it's important to be able to like interact with different people from different backgrounds, ecosystems, different just everything. And so I think from that standpoint it helps. Obviously from a competitive lens, I think it helps. It's one of those things where like I we always in football had like the next play mentality, and so
Yep.
I try to keep that with this job and just in life in general. Especially right now, was like I went to James Madison even in high school, like just did not lose a bunch, just didn't like I played on some. I was fortunate to play on some really good teams, and we won a lot of games, and so losing was just not something that I was accustomed to, and so having to learn how to like lose, but how to learn from losing and how to really think about like, okay, that's done. Like that play is behind you. If you don't come with like a fresh mindset, a fresh slate, a fresh, thought process, like you're gonna get beat again. Like the next play
Yeah.
mentality, you have to be able to turn the page very quickly. And so whether it's, a deal that doesn't go your way, or whether it's, you know, an ask from someone that, maybe you're not too fond about, like being able to just be like, hey, look, it is what it is. Let's get it done. Let's turn the next page and, keep it pushing. I
Yeah.
definitely credit football and being able to like just bounce back from stuff.
I love that. So as we come to like time, what advice would you give athletes who want to get into VC?
I would say, like I've been saying, this is a relationship based business. And so, one, I think you have to really leverage like the tools that are already out there in terms of like even LinkedIn, like building your own ecosystem, finding different ways to add value, to show that like you are valuable, to that you have a different perspective or viewpoint or lens on things that maybe someone else doesn't have, and understanding that there's value with that. And so I think for the venture space, I spent time with a lot of different undergrad students here recently after judging a competition, and the advice that I've been giving folks is like, look, you have a different sourcing capability, you have a different deal flow, you have different access to things that maybe I don't have access to or see, and understanding that there's value with that and being able to curate like, okay, I've built relationships. I understand what this person likes or what this person is building or what this person tends to invest in or this person's specialty. Let me try to like match make and curate these relationships so that I'm showing that like I have value in my network and my relationships is truly the best way, I think, to break in and enter the space and to uh to be able to make an impact.
Yeah. I love that, man. This has been great. Last question for you. If you can just give like one piece of advice to that athlete that's listening now who may be finishing up their senior year in college or maybe still currently playing professionally but thinking about transition, what's one piece of advice that they could be doing right now to prepare themselves for that next plan?
I think once again, going back to like the relationship aspect of things, one one of the things that I really didn't do as good of a job until like years after I was out of undergrad was like reaching out to people that were already in my corner, like reaching out to alumni from James Madison that were doing the things that I wanted to do. Like they have a they have a different viewpoint on things because they've experienced some of the same things that I've experienced. They experienced, like you were saying, going to the dining halls or going to this section of campus, or like they experienced some of those same things. So I think leveraging the relationships that you have within your university, and like reach out to your career center, reach out to, alumni on LinkedIn that are operating within the field that you're looking to operate in, and just make those connections. And I think if you don't know what field you're operating, want to operate in, like go through LinkedIn and find people who played on your team, or played for your university, or even played a different sport, and just reach out and just see if they're willing to chat. And a lot of times, you know, we were talking about this before the call. Like, this is extremely important. And granted, it's not talked about enough, like transitioning to the real world after giving up, college athletics. But it is something that every single collegiate athlete at one point has gone through or will go through. And so that transition, it's easy for some, it's tougher for others. But like I think, every athlete that has gone through a collegiate program knows that, like, hey, at some point this comes to an end, and like there's a transition aspect of it. And I got beat up by it, and I'm willing to share my experience with you to help you smooth, to help your process run a little bit more smoother than mine did. So I think
For
reaching out to
sure.
people in your corner is still, undervalued.
Absolutely, absolutely. Man, this has been great. And I really want to thank you for today and the conversation. As always, with Athletes at Boardroom, the goal is just to amplify these conversations and have real stories about things that athletes are going through or have gone through that can help aid and kind of support the next generation of athletes who are trying to formulate the next plan A, man. So that's episode 7 of the Transition Game podcast. You can find this podcast on our YouTube page as well as our website, www.athletetoboardroom.com. This is episode 7 with Adam Smith from Zeal Capital Partners and former champion at JMU football. We'll see you next time. Thank you.
Take it easy, man. Appreciate the work you're doing.